Doug Ford, the Premier of Ontario, has faced heavy criticism by yours truly. And now it seems like he's experienced something that is a little bit more personal to him, and it's changing his views. We're talking about our weak judicial system. You know, the whole jail, not bail thing that the Conservatives campaigned on? Well, it's very unfortunate that Doug Ford, the Premier of Ontario, which was a massive swing province, I guess, it was kind of the make or break of the election, how the Premier of Ontario, who's a Conservative, didn't actually openly endorse Pierre Poilievre. And now we're finding out that he almost wishes that he did. Let's take a look at this story. It's very interesting.
Well, this definitely caught reporters, even members of Doug Ford's own staff, off guard that he would be the target of would-be car thieves. Keep in mind that the Premier has around-the-clock protection from the OPP. The Premier made this revelation during the middle of a rant about his frustrations with the bail system. He talked about a bust in Peel region last week, the biggest ever when it comes to drugs, where roughly $50 million worth of cocaine was seized. All but one of the people charged in that case are already out on bail, and the Premier says that has to change, demanding the federal government tighten up rules, again slamming what he calls weak-kneed judges. That's when he got into that very scary situation at his home.
Now, I'm going to tell you a story, probably get in trouble for this. Do you want to hear about stupid criminals? Have you ever seen that show about stupid criminals out there? So 4 thugs come racing down my street, masks on, ready to take the car out of the driveway. Surprise, surprise, at 12:30, the 2 police cars are there. The chase is on. So they chase him. One guy runs out, takes off. They capture him, and they catch these other guys. But just imagine all the unfortunate people that don't have security there at their house with masks on, and they had all the tools ready to break in and everything, and guess what's going to happen? They're going to be back out. Why don't you guys come over for a barbecue tonight? I'll take care of you better than the police. And thank God the police got you, and I never did. Anyways, that's my rant. I'm sick and tired of the weak justice system that we have. They have to get a backbone, and we need to start throwing these people in jail. This is turning into a lawless society.
There was a whole lot more to that rant. The Premier suggested that Canada should have a law that allows people to defend their homes if they're under attack, something similar to we see in some U.S. states. He also talked about launching a fundraiser for a man in Vaughan who shot to try to scare off would-be car thieves from his home last week. That man is now facing gun charges, including possession of a prohibited or restricted weapon. Reporting live from Queen's Park, I'm Siobhan Morris.
Well. How the turns of table, Dougie boy. This is exactly what Pierre Poilievre and the Conservative Federal Party campaigned on and warned Canadians on. And people don't believe it until it hits close to home, to a loved one, a family member, a friend, or themselves. And here we are, poor Dougie boy, a little defenseless, going, people are trying to steal my cars. We got to crack down on this stuff. Yeah, we tried. We tried telling you, and you didn't listen. Instead, you were trying to suck at the teeth of Mark Carney instead of doing your due diligence, almost your responsibility as a Conservative Premier, and endorsing Pierre Poilievre, the Conservative federal candidate for Prime Minister. Shame on you. Shame on you. Anyways, stories like this are becoming more and more frequent. Now, I don't have it pulled up, but Calgary police last night did issue a warning that there was an increase in break-and-enters. And what are you supposed to do during a break-and-enter? Give the thieves what they want. There is no castle law in Canada. You don't really have the right to defend yourself. You do, but you don't. If somebody breaks into your home and you take action on that person, chances are you'll get sued. People are afraid to defend themselves from physical threats, and they're afraid to defend their family from physical threats. They're afraid to defend their own property from physical threats or theft and stuff like that. It's wild what's going on in Canada. We've tried to put that messaging out, but people don't seem to care because, Pierre is like the Trump of the North, said the CBC, which affected the entire election. Wow. Anyways, love to know what you guys think down below in the comments about that. Do you think this is a reality check for Doug Ford and Ontarians, or do you think that they're just going to go back to being the same liberal cucks that they've been? Love to know what you guys think. Next up, we're going to take a look at Zelensky and Mark Carney at the G7 summit. It turns out that Zelensky still couldn't find himself a suit after his visit to the Oval Office with Trump and JD Vance, where, remember that whole thing where he didn't even say thank you, which is controversially funny. Well, Zelensky made himself almost a suit. I don't know. Almost there, buddy. Almost there. Good job, ish. Anyways, let's listen to what these guys have to say.
I would like to start by condemning, in the strongest terms, the latest outrage, barbarism from Russia, and express my deep condolences, and those of the Canadian people, to the families in Kyiv who were affected. This underscores the importance of standing in total solidarity with Ukraine, with the Ukrainian people, and we had a discussion last night amongst G7 leaders. President and I will discuss more, and then of course we'll have the direct discussion in a moment together. But we underscored the importance of using maximum pressure against Russia, who has refused to come to the table. The president has led unconditionally to come to the table in search of peace. And maximum pressure. Oh
my goodness. I didn't watch this before I selected it to watch. We're watching this organically together for the first time. And I almost wish that I had like a beer next to me, even though it's not beer o'clock yet. I know somewhere it is in the world, but not where I am. I almost wish I had a beer. I took a sip every time he said, because it feels like he says it more than Justin Trudeau. I could be wrong, or it could be right.
Includes financial pressure, and Canada is announcing today several measures, sanctions, first and foremost, against a number of individuals in Russia, against over 40 entities in Russia and beyond that are trying to contribute to the evasion of sanctions, the sanctioning of over 200 vessels in the shadow fleet that Russia is using, again, to try to evade these sanctions. That's the first thing. The second is we are providing additional military assistance, drones, helicopters, broader munitions, over $2 billion worth of assistance directly to Ukraine. And thirdly, we are dispersing the next tranche of the loan based on the frozen Russian assets, over $2 billion as well. This is our contribution. We'll be working with our European and other allies for their contributions to provide the support.
So, important to note, it's not just $2 billion that we are sending. It's $2 billion of our own money, and then $2.3 billion of frozen Russian assets. Yikes. $4.3 billion in support for Ukraine as Carney and Zelensky meet at the G7. Oh mon Dieu.
That turning point where the world looks to this table for leadership.
Some of the most powerful people in the world gathering in Alberta, in Kananaskis for the G7.
Fair and more free.
And the global economy is at the center of today's discussion. Joining us now from Kananaskis is our Glenn McGregor. Glenn, Mark Carney's first order of business here is meeting with President Donald Trump. What came of that?
Yeah, that was even before the summit officially began. This was really the crucial meeting for Mark Carney. Of all the leaders he's going to be meeting with, there's most at stake in this meeting. And it began on kind of a bizarre note because Trump came out and went on this rant, standing next to Mark Carney in their meeting room, a rant about Vladimir Putin and Russia and how they should be returned, reinstated in the G7. Of course, they used to be part of what was called the G8. And then when Putin decided to annex Crimea back in 2014, the G7 decided as a group they're going to kick Russia out, and they're going to have their G7 that year was supposed to be in Russia, but actually decided to have it in Belgium instead, and Russia has never returned since. There's no appetite to do this. But Trump blamed former U.S. President Barack Obama for that decision, and he also blamed former Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, which doesn't make any sense because Trudeau wasn't Prime Minister at the time. He was a year later that he was first elected. It was Stephen Harper who was in power then. But then they eventually turned to the issue at hand.
I mean, to be fair, he is a United States president, so he's not really keeping tabs on every single prime minister and what year they started and ended. It was just off the fly, off the cuff. And it's easy to blame things on Trudeau. The only people that keep mentioning Harper are the Liberals from over 10 years ago. So, yeah, it's a bit of an oopsie. But anyways, we fact checked that on a previous live stream in real time using ChatGPT. And the second point is that Trump didn't just go on a rant. He was being asked questions from reporters, if I'm not mistaken. So he's answering reporters. It was more embarrassing for Mark Carney, who stood there next to the president, not getting any questions from reporters, and eventually going, "Excuse me, but I'm the chair of the G7, and I say that this press conference is over." And then President Trump taps him on the elbow going, yeah, it's okay. Sure, buddy, you can end it. Let's go have lunch or something, right? He asked Trump's permission to end it. It is so embarrassing. We all saw it.
And that, of course, is trade. Trump said that he still thinks there's a possibility that they can work out some kind of deal between Canada and the U.S. to remove those tariffs on multiple sectors, but he allowed that there are some differences in his approach to trade compared to Mark Carney. This is what Trump had to say.
Our primary focus will be trade and trade with Canada, and I'm sure we can work something out. I'm a tariff person. I've always been a tariff. It's simple, it's easy, it's precise, and it just goes very quickly. And I think Mark has a more complex idea, but also very good.
Obviously, tariffs are the #1 issue for Canada, but for the G7 as a whole, there are many world threats to discuss, including conflicts overseas and the escalating violence between Israel and Iran. What did we hear from President Trump about that?
Yeah, these are issues that are really dominating the summit, and Vladimir Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, is supposed to be coming. There's going to be lots of discussion about this. Is now the 4th time that the G7 has met to try and deal with the issue of Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022, and then there's the situation in Gaza. Now, at the beginning of that meeting between Carney and Trump, of course, there are American reporters. The White House traveling press pool is in the meeting there as well. It gets a chance to ask questions along with the Canadians, and they wanted to know from Trump whether or not he sees a way that the U.S. might get involved in this ongoing conflict, this now shooting war between Israel and Iran. This is what the president had to say.
What would you say, in your opinion, what would it take for the U.S. to get involved in this conflict militarily?
I don't want to talk about that.
So he doesn't want to talk about it for quite obvious reasons, because that would put the United States in a difficult position. He maintains that Iran should have been more cooperative, seeking a deal on their nuclear program with the United States. Of course, remember when Trump was president the first time that he basically tore up the deal that Barack Obama had signed. So there doesn't seem to be like an immediate hope for that.
Glenn McGregor in Kananaskis. Thanks, Glenn.
Thanks.